December 26, 1900. The steamer Hesperus cuts through the North Atlantic, pitching hard against a winter swell. She is 3 days late. Her destination, the Flannan Isles, a cluster of bare rock and grass in the Outer Hebrides. On board is relief keeper Joseph Moore, and a crew of men who are starting to look at the horizon with a growing, quiet unease. The sea here is unforgiving. It is a graveyard of hulls and spars and names that never made it home. The lighthouse on Flannan Moor was built because of that graveyard. 48 meters of stone, carved from the island itself, standing on a rock that is barely a mile long. The light was a beacon of order in a place that had none. As the Hesperus draws near, the men on deck look up. And they see nothing. No light. The lamp is dark. The tower is a gray silhouette against a gray sky. The relief vessel anchors in the lee of the island, and the sea is too rough to land immediately. They wait. The wind howls. The minutes stretch. Finally, a boat is lowered. Joseph Moore, the relief keeper, pulls for the landing stage with 2 seamen. The landing platform is intact. The crane is intact. The supply boxes are stacked, but they are the boxes from the last supply run, weeks ago. No one has come down to meet them. Moore calls out. No answer. The name is swallowed by the wind. He climbs the stone steps cut into the cliff. The path is wet and slick. He reaches the gate that leads to the compound. It is closed. Not locked. Closed. Moore pushes it open. The grass is long, undisturbed. No footprints. No sign of movement. The door to the lighthouse is locked. This is not unusual. But as Moore fumbles with the key, the silence presses in on him. He gets the door open. He steps inside. The clock on the wall has stopped. The hands hang at a fixed time. The fireplace is cold. The ashes are gray and fallen. On the table, a meal is laid. Plates. Cups. A chair is overturned. It lies on its side, like a man who stood up too fast and knocked it over in his haste. The beds are unmade. The blankets are thrown back, as if someone left in a hurry. The lamp in the kitchen is empty. It burned out. It burned out because no one was there to fill it. Moore checks the rooms. All of them. The place is empty. The 3 keepers are gone. James Ducat. Thomas Marshall. Donald McArthur. 3 men. Vanished off the face of the earth. Part 1. The light that went dark. The Flannan Isles are a scattering of 7 islands, and none of them are friendly. The main island, Flannan Moor, is little more than a cliff of gneiss, patched with a thin layer of grass. The sea around it is a constant threat. The currents rip through the channels. The Atlantic storms roll in without warning. Before the lighthouse, ships used to pile up on these rocks with terrifying regularity. The steamer Lady Ardilaun went down in 1895. The SS Wasp went down with all hands. The Northern Lighthouse Board had enough. In 1895, they began to build. The construction was brutal. The men lived in a temporary camp on the island, exposed to the worst weather in the North Atlantic. They worked with ropes and winches, carving the stone foundations out of the living rock. The tower rose, block by block, 5 years of labor, until the light was finally lit on December 7, 1899. The keepers were assigned in shifts. 4 men, but only 3 on the island at a time. The 4th was on shore leave. The routine was simple. 2 keepers on watch, 1 off. The light had to be trimmed, the wicks cleaned, the lens polished, the lamp refilled. The logbook had to be kept. Every day, every hour, the same entries. Wind. Weather. Pressure. The monotony was the point. Monotony meant nothing was wrong. James Ducat was the principal keeper. 43 years old. A steady man. A family man. He had served on lighthouses for years. He knew the sea. Thomas Marshall was the second assistant. 28 years old. Quiet. Reliable. Donald McArthur was the third assistant, but he was not a regular keeper. He was a temporary. He had been sent to the island to cover for a sick man. He was a big man. A strong man. And he had a reputation for being stubborn. These were the three men who were on Eilean Mor on the 7th of December, 1900, when the relief ship came and went. The logbook shows the day was calm. The weather was fine. The light was working. The men were healthy. Part 2. The last entry. The next weeks passed without incident, according to the log. The entries are routine. Wind from the southwest. Light winds. Clear skies. The men trimmed the lamp, they ate, they slept, they wrote their lines. On the 12th of December a severe gale swept through, and the entry for that day records it plainly. Storm, northwest. Wind force 11. Gale. Then, on the 13th, the weather eased. The last real entry in the logbook is dated the 13th of December. It is a calm note. The barometer was rising. The weather had moderated. Then the log stops. That is what the official record shows. The famous final entries, the ones that speak of a raging storm and men in distress, the ones that speak of three keepers praying and afraid, they do not exist. They were invented later. The real logbook simply ends on the 13th, with a quiet, ordinary line about the weather. The storm of legend never happened. The men were still alive on the 13th. They were alive, and they were going about their routine. And then, nothing. The official inquiry was led by Superintendent Robert Muirhead, a man of the Northern Lighthouse Board. He arrived on Eilean Mor on December 29, 3 days after Moore found the empty tower. He walked the same path. He saw the same scene. He interviewed Moore. He interviewed the seaman. He examined the logbook. He examined the clock, the table, the overturned chair. Muirhead's report is careful. He notes the door was locked from the inside. He notes the meal was laid but not eaten. He notes the clock had stopped. He notes the missing oilskins. The waterproof coats. The boots. The three men had taken their outdoor gear. They had gone outside. They had not come back. The weather on the day they vanished, the 13th, was calm. The sea was quiet. The wind was light. The official inquiry concluded that the three men were swept away by a sudden wave. A giant wave, a rogue wave, rising out of a calm sea, crashing over the landing stage, and taking all three men at once. The inquiry stated that the men had gone to the landing stage to secure a box, a supply box, and that the wave caught them. It was an accident. A tragic accident. The case was closed. But there are problems with this conclusion. The first is the rule. The iron rule. Every lighthouse keeper knew it. One man must always remain in the lighthouse. Always. You do not leave the light unattended. You do not all go out together. It was drilled into them. It was a law of the service. The landing stage was also a known danger. The men knew the sea. They knew the rocks. They knew that a wave could come at any moment. They would not have all gone down to the edge of the water unless something forced them. Unless something was wrong. The second problem is the clock. The clock had stopped. Why? The clock was wound daily. It was a routine. If the men had left in the morning, the clock would have been wound. It would have kept running. Unless they left in the middle of the night. Unless they left in a hurry. The third problem is the meal. The table was set. The plates were out. The food was on the table. It was a meal that was not eaten. Men do not set a table and then walk out to a landing stage to secure a box, leaving the food to go cold. Not all three of them. Not unless something happened very fast. Part 3. The myth. The official inquiry closed the case. The Northern Lighthouse Board moved on. But the story did not. It grew. It grew in the telling. It grew in the retelling. And it grew in a poem. In 1912, a poet named Wilfred Wilson Gibson published a ballad called Flannan Isles. It was a work of fiction. Gibson invented the details. He imagined the scene. He wrote of a clock stopped at a strange hour. He wrote of a chair overturned. He wrote of a logbook with a final, frantic entry. 3 men alive on Flannan Isles, who thought on 3 men dead. The poem was a sensation. It became the version of the story that everyone remembered. It became the truth, even though it was a lie. The logbook entries Gibson invented, the storm, the distress, the fear, they became the standard telling of the mystery. People quoted the poem as if it were a record. The real logbook, the calm entry of the 13th, was forgotten. The real weather, the calm sea, was forgotten. The myth took over. Over the years, the theories piled up. The rogue wave. A murder. A suicide pact. A kidnapping. A sea monster. A supernatural abduction. The lighthouse was said to be haunted. The keepers who came after the 3 missing men reported strange feelings. They heard footsteps. They heard voices. They refused to stay on the island alone. The superstition grew so strong that the Northern Lighthouse Board had to rotate the keepers more frequently. The island had a reputation. A bad reputation. But the facts remain thin. We know what we know. The men were there on the 13th. They were gone by the 26th. Their oilskins were gone. Their boots were gone. The door was locked from the inside. The clock was stopped. The meal was on the table. The chair was on its side. And the weather was calm. Part 4. The Empty Tower. There is a theory that the 3 men went down to the landing stage to secure a rope. A rope that had come loose. A rope that was attached to a supply box. And that a wave, a single, freak wave, rose up and took them. It is possible. The sea is a law unto itself. It does not care about rules. It does not care about routine. A rogue wave can come from a calm sea. It can rise without warning and swallow a man whole. But it would have taken all 3. And that is the problem. If one man had been swept away, the others would have tried to rescue him. They would have gone after him. They would have been swept away too. It is a terrible logic. A terrible, simple logic. 1 man goes in. 2 men go after him. 3 men are gone. The inquiry favored this version. It was simple. It was tragic. It was closed. But it left questions. It left the clock. It left the meal. It left the rule. It left the fact that 1 man should have stayed inside. The rule was iron. The rule was absolute. And the rule was broken. Unless it was not broken. Unless the men were not outside voluntarily. Unless they were taken. But taken by what? The sea. The wind. The darkness. The history of the island. The history of the rocks. The history of the dead ships and the dead sailors who had been claimed by the same water, in the same place, year after year after year. The Flannan Isles lighthouse is now automated. No one lives there. The light still turns. The lens still shines. The machinery hums in an empty room. The table is no longer set. The clock is no longer wound. The 3 men are gone, and they have never been found. No bodies. No wreckage. No trace. The official case was closed in 1900. It was never reopened. It was never solved. It was filed away in the records of the Northern Lighthouse Board, a note in a ledger, a line in a report. 3 keepers lost. Cause of death, accidental drowning. Cause of death, a wave. Cause of death, no one knows. And that is where the story ends. Not with an answer. Not with a body. Not with a confession. It ends with an empty room, a cold fire, a stopped clock, and a meal that was never eaten. It ends with 3 men who walked out of their door on a calm day, into the wind, and were never seen again. They are still out there. Somewhere in the water. Somewhere in the dark. Somewhere in the space between the light and the sea. The lamp still burns. But it burns for no one.